I can still feel it, his words like a slap I didn't see coming. You stir lazy. He said it like I was a defective product, like he'd made the biggest mistake of his life by marrying me into this family. My father-in-law leaned back in that massive leather chair, smirk plastered across his face, eyes glinting with satisfaction, the kind of satisfaction that comes from seeing someone you supposedly tolerates crumble. I froze, heart pounding, every nerve screaming, my mouth opened then shut. Nothing came out. My husband laughed, nervously, like a coward hiding behind humor. He didn't defend me, didn't even flinch. Dad, come on, he muttered, awkward and small. Small, that's exactly what I felt. Small, humiliated, exposed in front of the entire family. In front of his business associates who were nodding, pretending not to notice the tension, but noticing. I wanted to vanish, or punch him, or scream, all at once. Lazy, he repeated, leaning forward, fingers steepled. I've never seen someone with your potential waste it so completely. I forced a smile. Weak, trembling, my hands balled into fists under the table. Rage bubbled inside me, sharp and hot. But I swallowed it. Swallowed every ounce of fury, every sting of shame, because what could I say? That he was a controlling, arrogant tyrant. That my husband, my supposed partner, was turning into a ghost before my eyes. I couldn't stat. Not yet. I excused myself. Bathroom, hallway, anywhere but there. The door shut behind me with a solid thud. My reflection stared back at me, eyes wide, lips pressed tight, angry, hurt, confused. Am I really lazy? I whispered to my reflection, hating the uncertainty that trembled in my voice. No, that wasn't me, not at all. I remembered all the nights I stayed up, building projects, learning new skills, trying to contribute, trying to prove myself in a world that seemed determined to label me incapable. And now, all that effort, erased. By one sentence, one dismissive smirk. I replayed it over and over. Each time the words cut deeper, was it always there? This disdain? Or did he just want to watch me squirm today? My chest burned. A spark of something stronger than hurt flared inside me. Rage, not blind rage, but sharp, calculating. He thought he could belittle me, make me small, make me quiet. He was wrong. I left the bathroom, back into the gathering. I smiled, controlled, polished, the mask of civility, but underneath the fire was growing. My husband leaned close, whispered, "Done set, take it so personally." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I felt something icy settle in my veins, not just anger, disappointment, betrayal. How could the person I trusted most allow this? I nodded, quiet, calm, too calm. "Don't take it personally," he said again. I wanted to laugh, bitter, hollow. Oh, I will, I thought. And when I do, you shall see the price of your silence. The night ended, applause, handshakes, polite chatter, but I walked away from that room with a plan forming in the corners of my mind. Subtle, patient, perfect. I wasn't lazy. Not now, not ever. And soon he would learn exactly what happens when you underestimate me. Weeks passed, or maybe days felt like weeks. Time blurred. At first, I thought I was imagining it. "Did you see her presentation?" a colleague whispered. "She tried, but, well, you know." I froze mid-sip of my coffee. My eyes darted around. They were all watching me, smiling politely, but something in their eyes doubt. My husband laughed at one of my suggestions during a meeting. A polite chuckle, nothing more. He didn't argue. He didn't support. Just shrugged. "Really?" I asked him later, voice tight. "You think that spet's funny?" He shrugged again. "I don't know. Maybe you are overthinking it." Overthinking. The word stung like acid. I started noticing everything. Little things. The way my colleagues nodded at him, ignored me. The way whispers slipped past lips. "Your father-in-law thinks," followed by silence. I questioned myself. Was I lazy? Incompetent? Was I really that invisible? I looked at my hands, scarred from late nights, cramped from endless typing, tired from pushing beyond everyone else. Did it mean nothing? One night, alone in the apartment, I whispered to the empty walls. Am I really that bad? No answer, just my own heartbeat, loud and accusing. But deep inside, I knew the truth. I worked harder than most, smarter than some, and none of it mattered to him, to them. Anger settled quietly. Beneath the surface, molten, waiting. I started paying attention. Every meeting, every glance, every power move. I learned the dynamics of his business, who favored whom, who whispered to whom. I noted weaknesses, favoritism, every crack in their shiny facade. "You're quiet today," my husband said one evening, as we left a dinner with his associates. "I'm observing," I replied, my voice calm, too calm. "Observing what?" "Everything," I said. A small smile curved my lips. Not friendly, not playful, calculating. I wanted him to notice the shift, the subtle edge in my voice, the sparks of fire he couldn't see yet. Every compliment I didn't receive, every idea dismissed, became fuel. Every smirk, every whisper, etched into my mind. Patterns emerged, weaknesses, vulnerabilities, blind spots. I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. I was instead powerless. I was invisible, untouched, underestimated. And invisibility is a weapon. I began to plan, carefully, patiently, quietly, like a storm gathering on the horizon. I could feel it in my bones. Revenge didn't have to be loud, not yet. It just had to be inevitable. And I would make sure it was. The boardroom was tense, electric. I could feel it the second I stepped in. My husband stood at the head of the table, laptop open, a stack of papers trembling slightly in his hands. The golden sun, they all called him. But today he was anything but golden. "Let's start with the quarterly projections," he said, voice tight. He clicked. Slides shuffled. I watched as he stumbled over numbers, mispronounced client names, missed crucial points. The room shifted, eyes darted, smiles vanished. He faltered. I wanted to reach out, to save him, but my hands stayed clenched at my sides. I stayed quiet. After the meeting, doors closed and the air turned cold. My father-in-law leaned back in his chair, eyes narrow, lips curling in that smirk I hated. "Really, Wahab," he said. My husband flinched. "I can't believe this all because of you, right?" He glanced at me, his gaze sharp, accusing. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice low. "You," he said, tapping his temple. "You such supposed to guide him, prepare him, but obviously your influence," his smirk widened, "is lacking." I froze, my stomach dropped. Heat burned my cheeks. Rage, sharp and undeniable, surged. "You such are blaming me?" I hissed. "For his mistakes." "You heard me," he said, shrugging. "You think he seps perfect. I think you sep are lazy. Coincidence?" My husband didn't speak. He avoided my eyes. Typical. I stepped closer. "You think I sept mine lazy?" My voice trembled, but not from fear, from fury. "You think I sept him incompetent? That your golden son fails because of me?" "Yes," my father-in-law said calmly, like he was stating a fact, not realizing he'd lit a fire he'd never contain. Something inside me snapped. I wanted to scream, to strike, but no words. No fight. Not here, not like this. Instead, I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile, cold, calculated. "I see," I said. "I understand my shortcomings." He leaned back, satisfied, thought he supped one. But the truth was, I had already won, not in their eyes, not yet, but in mine. That night, alone in my office, I replayed every humiliation, every whispered insult, every moment I'd been dismissed. And I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him with words. I wouldn't beg for respect. I wouldn't plead for recognition. I would strike where it hurt most. His business, his empire, the world he used to lord over me. I started taking notes, not on spreadsheets, not on reports, but on habits. Patterns, weaknesses, who he trusted, who he ignored, every favor, every oversight. I overheard partners whispering in the hallways. "She seps quiet but smart, dangerous." Dangerous. I let the word settle in my chest. I liked it. I watched my husband the next day. He laughed too loudly at his father's jokes, took credit quietly for projects I had subtly guided him on. The golden sun more tarnished than anyone realized. I smiled behind my laptop screen, patient, precise. Wahab, can you review these numbers? I asked him casually. He nodded. Didn't notice I had subtly rearranged the projections to highlight gaps in his knowledge. Small tweaks. Harmless. To him. Catastrophic if ignored. You're doing well, I said softly. Almost innocent. He smiled. Relief washing over him. Blissfully unaware. I leaned back. Fingers steepled. The fire was there. Quiet, molten. Waiting for the perfect moment. My father-in-law, of course, continued to underestimate me. Every glance, every comment, every dismissive gesture. Fuel. I began planning. Not out of malice. Out of necessity. Out of justice. Poetic justice. I would show him. Show them all. They thought I was fragile, malleable, invisible. But I was neither. And soon they set see. I would dismantle the walls they built. Not with words, not with noise, with precision, with patience, with power. The breaking point wasn't a moment. It was a choice. And I had chosen. I moved quietly, carefully, like a shadow slipping past their awareness. No one suspected me. Not my husband. Not his golden father. Not the colleagues who smiled too brightly in meetings. They thought I was just patient, gentle, harmless. Perfect. Could you help me with this report? I asked the IT head one morning, voice casual, eyes curious. He glanced at me. Sure. Youssef never done anything like this before. Learning, I said, a small smile. Innocent, harmless. He hesitated, then nodded. All right. Follow me. I trailed behind him, notebook in hand, pretending to scribble notes about systems, deadlines, and workflows. But really, I was memorizing weaknesses. Every mismanaged file, every overlooked error, every inefficiency tucked into the shadows. Later in the break room, I watched colleagues laugh at something trivial. I smiled politely, sipping my coffee, noting who deferred to whom, who was ignored and who whispered behind closed doors. You're quiet today, a manager said, handing me a folder. I like to observe, I replied lightly. Makes it easier to understand the bigger picture. She chuckled. You're a hard worker, you know that. Trying, I murmured, flipping open the folder. Every small project I volunteered for became a foothold. I handled it meticulously. No mistakes. Quiet competence. Nothing flashy, nothing threatening. One day my husband peeked over my shoulder. Why are you always buried in these reports? Curious, I said softly, wanting to understand how everything works, better prepare myself. He nodded, smiled, blissfully unaware that I wasn't preparing him, I was preparing myself. I began keeping a journal. Hidden, secret, errors, missed deadlines, incompetence. Every lapse, every oversight, every failure, tracked meticulously. Cross-referenced, linked back to him. Why are you so organized? A colleague asked one afternoon. I shrugged. Casual. I like to know what step's happening, helps me sleep at night. Sleep? A lie. I barely slept. I spent nights piecing together every detail, every email thread, every misstep. The IT head was my unintentional ally. He trusted me because I asked the right questions, stayed quiet about office politics, and seemed eager to learn. He didn't notice when I subtly tested systems, watched logins, monitored deadlines. Do you want me to show you the reporting software? He asked one day. Yes, I said. I said to love that. Inside, I grinned faintly. One more door opened, one more piece of the puzzle. At lunch I sat alone, flipping through my journal. My handwriting sprawled across pages, dates, names, errors, consequences, each one a thread leading back to him. My husband, my father-in-law, the golden son who stumbled, the patriarch who smirked. I traced patterns with my finger. A missed email here, a delayed approval there. A manager overlooked. I smiled, quietly, calmly, satisfaction simmered beneath my skin. You're really focused, a junior manager said. I like knowing things, I said. It keeps me prepared. Prepared, exactly. Each day my resolve strengthened. Every small victory, earning trust, uncovering incompetence, mapping weaknesses, built momentum. I wasn't lazy, I wasn't weak, I was patient, calculating, ready. One evening, my husband leaned against the doorway of the office. "You've changed," he said softly, concern lacing his voice. "What are you planning?" I looked at him, smiled. "Nothing," I said, truthfully nothing that he could see. But inside, everything. I had eyes everywhere, ears tuned to murmurs, whispers, gossip. Every office hallway became a map of opportunity. Every meeting a chessboard, every colleague, willing or not, a piece on the board. I began to exploit trust quietly. Managers confided in me, team leads brought me problems. Partners shared frustrations, all unguarded, all useful. One evening, alone in the office, I spoke aloud to no one. "You think you control this world? You think you see everything, but I see more than you ever imagined." My reflection in the glass caught my eyes. Cold, steely, determined. I imagined the moment it would all come together. The look on their faces when the empire they thought unshakable crumbled from the inside. Not recklessly, not dramatically, but precisely, like a storm no one saw coming. And yet, I waited. Patience was part of the plan. Every piece in place, every thread tied, every weakness exposed in secrecy. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't loud. I was invisible. Calculating. Strategic. Each evening I closed my journal, stacked neatly on the shelf, pages filled with proof of their failings, mapped meticulously to strike at the right moment. They believed I was patient, harmless, a quiet observer. Perfect. Because when the time came, I would show them the truth. And no one, not my husband, not my father-in-law, not any colleague, would see it coming. I wasn't instead lazy. I was building power. I was building revenge. And I was unstoppable. I leaned back in my chair, watching the boardroom from the corner. Every detail mattered. The tilt of a head, a nervous glance, a too quick nod. This wasn't chaos. This was chess. I cleared my throat softly. I noticed something unusual in John Sepp's team. Heads turned. My husband speaks first, eyes widening ever so slightly. Unusual. What do you mean? "Well," I said, voice casual, almost conversational, "there are financial discrepancies in the last quarter. Maybe we should review the workflow?" A pause. The kind that spreads unease. "Discrepancies?" one board member asked, brow furrowed. "Yes," I said, calm, patient, precise. Nothing huge, but noticeable enough to warrant a check. Whispers started. Soft, subtle, like a breeze rustling papers. "Did you see this? Could it be oversight?" Or, eyes flicked to my husband. He laughed nervously. "It's nothing. Just a small miscalculation. Probably my oversight." I smiled inwardly. Oversight. That word sounded hollow, didn't it? Like a warning wrapped in an excuse. Later, behind closed doors, I found my father-in-law, leaned casually against the doorway, arms crossed. "I heard you were poking into numbers," he said, amusement in his voice. "I like to understand the business," I said lightly. "I think it helps when decisions are made." He chuckled. "Curious little thing, aren't set you?" I nodded. "Observant too. Helps avoid mistakes." Mistakes. I let the word hang in the air. Subtle, poisonous. He didn't notice the jab aimed squarely at his golden sun. Each board meeting became a stage. Every conversation, an opportunity. I planted hints carefully, casually, almost as if they were my own passing thoughts. I noticed delays in client approvals. I said one morning to a senior manager, "It seems John Sepp's team isn't following the timeline strictly. Might be worth reviewing." The manager nodded, brow furrowed. Yes, you such were right. I still check into it." Another small seed, planted, watered, ready to grow. My husband didn't see it. Never did. He smiled at me later. "You really thorough," he said, unaware he was the target. "Always checking details." "Someone has to," I murmured, voice soft, lethal in its calmness. At night, alone in the office, I catalogued every move, every whisper, every glance, every doubt I had seeded. Cross-referenced it with emails, project delays, and team errors. Patterns emerged, threads that, when tugged, would unravel him entirely. I imagined the moment, the slow realization in his eyes as board members questioned him. Partners who once bowed, now skeptical, unsure, and my father-in-law smirking at first. Then confusion, then shock. I traced the timeline with my finger. Each planted hint led to another. Each whisper magnified. My husband's golden facade cracking, unnoticed by him until it was too late. I practiced my voice for the subtle suggestions. Maybe we should double-check the quarterly reports. Casual, innocent, questioning, perfect. Board members began to talk among themselves. Quietly, just enough for him to hear murmurs at his next meeting. "Do you think we're overlooking something?" one asked him cautiously. "What?" he said, confused. "It's steps, just minor things, maybe," another said. "But some numbers don't add up. Perhaps we need to review your team's SIP's workflow." And he froze. The golden sun, unprepared, vulnerable, exactly where I wanted him. Later my father-in-law commented, oblivious, "You've really taken an interest in these reports. Smart girl, very thorough." I smiled. "I like to see the whole picture," I said softly. Inside, my satisfaction was molten, burning. He had underestimated me entirely. Every move he thought invisible to me, every dismissal, every condescending glance. Fuel. I walked past my husband's Step's office the next day. "John? I noticed the client feedback hasn't been consolidated properly," I said casually. "Maybe you need help reviewing it?" He nodded, distracted. "Thanks, I still get to it." Little did he know, it wasn't about helping. It was about exposing cracks, magnifying doubts, making sure everyone saw what I already knew: he wasn't infallible. Each suggestion, each casual observation, every whispered doubt built momentum. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't loud. I was invisible. Patient. Strategic. Every day, my journal grew thicker. Names, dates, mistakes, hesitations, errors linked, patterns traced, ready to strike. I imagined the climax, the board questioning, the partners whispering, my father-in-law staring in disbelief. And through it all, me, calm, calculating, unseen until the very end. And then, the exposure. Precise. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to argue. My careful orchestration would speak for me. They had dismissed me for too long, laughed at me, thought me lazy, harmless, invisible, perfect. Because when the final moment came, I would be neither invisible nor harmless. I would be unstoppable. And he, the golden sun, would be powerless. The day of the quarterly review arrived. My stomach was calm, steady, collected. No tremors, no doubt. Just clarity. I walked into the boardroom, carrying my folder, thick with notes, emails, and evidence I had spent months gathering. Every error, every missed deadline, every financial misstep, all carefully catalogued. My husband smiled at me from the head of the table. The golden sun, oblivious. "Morning," he said, voice casual. "Ready for this?" "Always," I replied softly, smiling, innocent, harmless, perfect. The meeting began. Numbers flashed on screens. Reports were read. I listened. Patient, observing, waiting. Then came my moment. I cleared my throat. I sipped like to address some concerns regarding workflow and financial management in John Sepp's team. Eyes turned to me, curious. A few skeptical. My husband's jaw tightened ever so slightly. "Concerns?" my husband asked, voice steady but tension creeping in. "Yes," I said, opening my folder. I've been reviewing reports and cross-referencing deadlines, approvals, and client feedback. Several patterns have emerged, patterns that indicate repeated mismanagement and oversight. I let it hang, let the silence grow. Board members exchanged glances. "Repeated mismanagement?" one asked. "Can you be more specific?" I smiled faintly. Of course. I presented emails, delayed approvals, and budget discrepancies. Here the Smith account was mishandled, leading to client dissatisfaction. Here Project X missed key deadlines. Here inconsistencies in financial reporting caused confusion for the entire team. But the Sint was at Brinty Pariki Bursid. My husband's eyes widened. "Wait, that Sep's not." I anticipated it. Every excuse, every deflection, every weak defense he might use. I had prepared for them all. "John, these are documented, dated, and verified," I said softly. "The evidence is clear. These mistakes aren't sit isolated, they sit repeated." He opened his mouth, fumbling. I wasn't aware. I mean, she. Excuse me? I said, voice sharp. Are you blaming me for this? The board murmured. Some nodded. Some frowned. He hesitated, realizing the room was shifting. The power was no longer his. I didn't stet. You didn't stet? I interrupted gently. Or you didn't stet want to admit it, because the evidence doesn't stet lie. Not one report, not one email. Everything traces back to decisions you made or didn't stet make. Whispers spread. It's Seps all here. How long did this go unnoticed? Unbelievable. I let them speak. I let doubt seep into every corner of the room. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to argue. The dominoes were already lined up. John, I said, leaning slightly forward, calm, collected, I suggest we discuss a course correction, and perhaps review leadership responsibilities. My husband swallowed, voice tight, almost breaking. I can explain. No, I said softly. There's Seps nothing to explain. The facts speak for themselves. Board members conferred quietly, reviewing the documentation I had meticulously prepared. Some whispered, some nodded, some stared at him incredulously. Do you see now? I asked, voice quiet, cutting. This is instead opinion, this is fact. My father-in-law sat back, arms crossed, smirk fading. Confusion flashed across his face. Shock, betrayal, disbelief. I felt a rush of something long suppressed. Vindication, relief, power. One of the senior partners finally spoke. Given the evidence, the repeated failures, I think it subs clear the team needs new leadership. Another nodded, agreed. John, it's Sepstum's time to step down. My husband's face drained of color. Step down? No, wait. The board shook their heads. Unanimous. Final. I closed my folder, placing it neatly on the table. Calm, composed. The room fell silent, the weight of inevitability settling in. He had failed. Every defense crumbled. Every excuse evaporated. I looked at my husband, the golden sun, powerless, vulnerable, reduced to a quiet, trembling man. And then I looked at my father-in-law, smirk replaced by disbelief, eyes wide, a sharp intake of breath, shock radiated from him. I smiled inwardly, quietly, satisfyingly. He had underestimated me. Every glance he thought I didn't notice, every word he dismissed, every slight, it had all led here. You played a clever game, my father-in-law finally said, voice low. Astonishment mixed with begrudging respect. Not clever, I said softly. Patient. The meeting ended. I walked out of the boardroom, head high, heart steady. Colleagues looked at me with new eyes. Curiosity, respect, a hint of fear. Outside, I breathed in the crisp air. The taste of victory was sharp, intoxicating. I had been dismissed, belittled, called lazy, invisible. Not anymore. I had played the game, and I had won. The golden sun was gone. My father-in-law's gaze still lingered in shock, disbelief, and perhaps a trace of admiration. I felt the weight lift from my shoulders, my dignity restored, my power undeniable. I had turned humiliation into triumph, disrespect into leverage. And the world I had quietly observed, learned and infiltrated, it was now mine, not by title, not by claim, but by cunning, patience, and relentless precision. Every domino had fallen exactly as I had planned. And I walked away, leaving them to pick up the pieces. He found me in the office late one evening. The building was quiet, the hum of the air conditioning the only sound. I wanted to speak with you, he said, hesitating, hands in pockets, shoulders stiff. The golden sun wasn't here, just him, the patriarch, my father-in-law. I looked up from my papers, calm, polished. Yes? I asked softly. He cleared his throat. I misjudged you. I didn't move, didn't blink, just let the words hang between us. You, Sev, shown remarkable insight, leadership, patience, skill. I nodded slowly. I see. He shifted, avoided my gaze. There was no pride in his eyes now, only something heavier. Shame, realization, the weight of having been wrong. Perhaps I undervalued your contributions. Maybe I dismissed you unfairly. I smiled politely, not warm, not friendly, polite. That's appreciated, he said quietly, trying to salvage dignity, trying to save face. I leaned back slightly, watching him wrestle with himself. He was trapped not physically, but morally. He had built a world of influence, control, and perception, and I had quietly dismantled it from the inside. You always said I was lazy, he murmured, that I was not enough to be taken seriously. Yes, I said softly. Let it linger. Not an accusation, just a statement. Truth. He flinched, as if the words themselves were a slap. I never thought. But he didn't finish. Could instead. I rose from my chair. Calm. Precise. You misjudged me. Underestimated me. Dismissed me. He swallowed. Eyes fixed somewhere on the floor. The weight of months, years even, of his arrogance pressed down. I see that now, he said finally. I should have listened. I should have. Should have what? I asked softly. Respected me? Valued my insight when it mattered? Yes, he whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Silence carried the sting better than words ever could. I moved past him, letting him stew in the consequences of his own underestimation. Every step I took echoed subtly, a quiet reminder that I now moved freely in a world he thought controlled. Your patience, your precision, he said, voice tight. It's impressive. I underestimated you completely. Yes, I said again. Simple, true, firm. The office was still, shadows stretching across the walls. Outside, the city lights twinkled, indifferent. Inside, the balance of power had shifted silently, irrevocably. I walked to the window, looking out, letting the glow of streetlights paint my reflection. I could feel him there, behind me, still trying to process, still trying to claim some shred of authority. There's no apology, he said finally. Almost a confession, not enough words to make up for it. I didn't answer, didn't need to. My revenge wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was precise. Surgical, unmistakable in its impact. He had made me feel small, invisible, dismissed, laughed at. And now? I had reshaped the very reality he had built. I turned to him once more, eyes calm, steely, unyielding. I hope you understand, not because I asked you to, not because I need it, but so you can recognize what underestimation costs. He nodded slowly, silent, accepting the truth without words. Your world, I said softly, was once yours to control. Now it's yours to reckon with. I left the office then. Step by step, leaving him to reflect, to realize fully that arrogance has consequences, that underestimating someone doesn't erase their power, it only delays it. And as I walked into the night, I felt something I hadn't felt for a long time. Closure? Not revenge's fury, not triumph's roar, but calm satisfaction. I had been small in his eyes, invisible perhaps. Not anymore. I had played the long game. I had been patient, cunning, relentless, and the result was undeniable. He would never see me the same way again. And that was enough. The office felt different, lighter, charged, full of possibilities. I walked down the hallways, past familiar faces who now looked at me differently, respect, curiosity, a hint of awe. Congratulations, a senior manager said quietly, catching me near the conference room. Thank you, I replied, calm, controlled, no need to boast. My work spoke for itself. He nodded. I didn't expect you. I smiled faintly. You underestimate people at your own risk. The whispers had changed. Once they doubted me, questioned my decisions, laughed behind my back. Now they came to me. For advice, for guidance, for strategy. In meetings I spoke with clarity, precision, confidence, every suggestion grounded in knowledge, every decision deliberate. Your analysis on the Smith account was impressive, a colleague said during a project review. Thank you, I replied. I simply followed the data and noticed patterns others overlooked. The golden sun was gone, removed from his position. The weight of months of humiliation, doubt, and belittlement had finally shifted, and yet, I didn't gloat, not aloud, not in triumph. Because my satisfaction wasn't in revenge anymore. It was in power reclaimed, in respect earned, in proving, to myself first, that I was capable, that I was strong, that I mattered. I watched a junior manager approach me, hesitant. Can I ask for your input on this workflow? Of course, I said, gesturing to the folder. As he explained, I realized something. I wasn't just influencing outcomes, I was reshaping culture, encouraging competence, rewarding diligence, elevating those willing to work hard and think critically. Later, I called a meeting with the board members. I'd like to discuss new initiatives, I said softly, confident commanding attention. They listened, all of them. Not because they had to, but because they respected what I brought to the table. You've transformed the department, one board member said quietly after the presentation. I'm simply ensuring we operate efficiently, I replied, calm, measured. But inside, satisfaction burned brightly. It wasn't about proving him wrong anymore, about showing my father-in-law that I could lead. It was about proving to myself that I had the strength, patience, and strategy to claim what was rightfully mine. I thought of all the moments I had been dismissed. The laughter, the smirks, the casual disregard, the label of laziness, all gone, replaced by competence, by results, by power. I walked into the conference room later, alone for a moment, and looked out the window. The city lights flickered like possibilities. I felt peaceful, strong, unstoppable. The colleagues who once whispered, "She can't handle it now," sought my advice, deferred to my judgment, and implemented my strategies without question. One of the junior staff smiled at me. "I never thought we stud get results like this. Thank you for leading us." I nodded. We all contributed. I just guided. It felt good, different, empowering, not revenge-fueled, not ego-driven, pure, quiet triumph. Later I spoke with a few board members privately. I want to maintain transparency, encourage innovation, reward effort. They agreed, nods, quiet smiles, understanding, respect. I thought of my father-in-law, of the shock in his eyes, of the disbelief, of the grudging recognition that he had underestimated me. And then I thought of my husband. Once golden, now irrelevant in this space I had claimed. I didn't need to humiliate him further. The removal, the exposure, had spoken louder than any words could. I returned to my office, placing my folder down, calm, centered, triumphant in the quietest way. I had reclaimed more than a position. I had reclaimed my self-worth, my pride, my dignity, my agency. I wasn't lazy, I was deliberate. Patient, strategic, powerful. The company, once a stage for my humiliation, was now a place of empowerment, a place where my voice mattered. My decisions influenced outcomes, my vision shaped direction. And that was enough. I finally allowed myself to breathe fully, to feel the weight lift completely. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone, not to him, not to my father-in-law, not even to the colleagues who had doubted me. I had proven it to myself. And that was more than enough. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the skyline, quiet satisfaction, steady heartbeat, calm resolve. I was unstoppable. And I knew it. The morning light filtered through the office windows, soft but steady. I stood by the glass, watching the city wake, and let myself breathe. No meetings, no whispers, no doubts, just me, and a world I had claimed, shaped, and held firmly in my hands. I remembered the first time I walked these halls, labeled lazy, dismissed, invisible, the sting of laughter, the weight of words, the subtle glances from colleagues who thought I didn't belong. "Are you sure you can handle this?" Someone had asked once. I smiled faintly at the memory. "Watch me," I had replied softly. No anger, just certainty. It wasn't revenge that drove me, not anymore. That fire had burned itself out. What remained was clarity, resilience, power channeled with precision. I walked past the conference room. Inside, a few colleagues discussed strategy, and their voices carried respect, not doubt. "Her plan for the client rollout was flawless," one whispered. "Yeah, she really thought of everything," another agreed. I paused, letting the words reach me. Let them sink in, not for validation, not for pride, but for quiet satisfaction. I moved toward my office, reflecting months of observation, months of patience, calculated steps. Every insult, every slight, every dismissal had been stored, analyzed, and turned into strategy. I hadn't broken anyone. I hadn't humiliated anyone unnecessarily. I simply reclaimed what was mine, my respect, my voice, my dignity. I remembered my father-in-law's smirk when he called me lazy. My husband's laughter that cut sharper than any blade. The whispered doubts in boardrooms. Maybe she can't manage it, someone had said. Now they listened when I spoke. They valued insight I had painstakingly proven, quietly but undeniably. I sat at my desk, letting the stillness settle. My scars were still there, emotional bruises, memories of humiliation, but they weren't weaknesses anymore. They were reminders, proof that I had endured, that I had risen, that I had learned. I picked up a folder of reports, numbers, projects, successes, tangible evidence that effort, clarity, and strategy always outweighed arrogance and neglect. A junior colleague poked her head in. "Do you have a moment?" "Of course," I said. She approached nervously. "I just wanted your input on this workflow. I think it could be more efficient." I smiled. "Let's SEPs review it together. We still make it better." Her face brightened. She didn't just see me as a leader, she saw that guidance could be fair, patient, and empowering. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes for a moment. Victory wasn't about humiliation. It wasn't about proving him wrong. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming agency over my own life, over my worth. I thought about the long nights of planning, of quietly cataloging errors, of calculating every move. It had been exhausting, painful, sometimes lonely. But I had emerged intact, stronger, sharper. A voice echoed from the hallway. A board member asking a question, seeking clarity. I smiled to myself. They came to me now, not to him, not to the man who had dismissed me. To me. I reflected on the irony. The ones who once judged me had unknowingly contributed to my growth. Every doubt, every whisper, every underestimation became fuel, not hatred, not malice, fuel for precision, fuel for clarity. I stood, moving to the window again. The city stretched below, vibrant, alive. I realized something essential. Victory isn't about hurting others. It's about ensuring no one else has the power to define your worth again. I whispered softly to myself, almost a mantra, almost a promise. I am enough. I am capable. I am unstoppable. The office hummed quietly around me. Life moving, decisions being made, strategies unfolding, and I was at the center, not dominating, not overshadowing, but present, commanding without force, leading without fear. I walked down the hall, past colleagues who now greeted me with respect, past spaces that once held my humiliation, now spaces of opportunity. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had survived. I had risen. I had reclaimed power, and in doing so, I had found peace. My journey wasn't just about retaliation. It was about resilience, about strategy, about patience, about turning pain into empowerment. I paused by the glass doors, looking at the city again. My reflection merged with the skyline. Strong, calm, resilient. And I knew, without a shadow of doubt, that I would never again let anyone define me, diminish me, or make me feel invisible. Because I had risen, and rising was its own